Today we're learning how to make salteñas de pollo. We'll start with the ingredients here. We've got a whole rotisserie chicken shredded here. You can use 2 chicken breasts and boil them yourself if you want. 2 large red onions, 3 to 5 cold potatoes, 2 tablespoons of parsley, an entire box of unflavored gelatin, a quarter teaspoon of cumin, 1 tablespoon of oregano, a quarter teaspoon of pepper, 1/4 cup of sugar, a quarter to a half a cup of frozen peas, 1 teaspoon of chicken bouillon powder plus 1 liter and half a cup of broth, 5 eggs, 1 teaspoon of garlic paste, and a quarter cup of ají amarillo. We'll start by blanching our diced potatoes. All that means is you bring your water to a boil and then you put your potatoes in for about 5 minutes. This is how small the potatoes should be. And there's no salt in the water at all. Once the potatoes have finished cooking, we'll transfer them to an ice bath so that they don't continue to cook and get mushy. In the back here, we'll hard boil our eggs. Put your eggs in the cold water, bring it to a boil, and then turn off the heat as soon as it starts to boil. Let that sit for about 10 minutes. At the same time, we'll go ahead and start cooking our onions. This is going to be the base of your jigote, or the filling of the salteña, so it has to be continuously stirred. If the onions burn, you have to throw it out and start all over. This is very, very important, so continuously stir it so that nothing sticks, nothing gets burned, and everything cooks evenly. We'll cook it on about a medium heat setting for about 15 minutes. This is the ají amarillo. We don't like it so spicy, so we put a little bit of vegetable oil to kind of bring down the heat. If you like the spice, just leave everything the way it is. 15 minutes have already passed, and this is what your onion should look like at this point. We'll add the ajo paste, or the garlic paste. If you don't have garlic paste, you can just chop up a teaspoon of garlic and blend it with some water. And then we'll also add the ají amarillo. We'll cook these both together with the onions for about 5 extra minutes. After the 5 minutes, we're adding our quarter teaspoon of pepper and quarter teaspoon of cumin. Next, we're adding 1 teaspoon of chicken bouillon. Make sure everything is mixed well, and then add the 1 liter plus half a cup of chicken broth. Mix everything well, and then add your quarter to half a cup of frozen peas. We'll put the lid on it and then cook everything for about 25 minutes. It's been 25 minutes, and this is how your jigote should be looking. We're going to go ahead and incorporate our gelatin and sugar. We'll mix those together. And with your spoon, you'll be mixing the jigote in a circular motion and then drizzling in the gelatin and sugar mixture so that nothing clumps. Next, we're adding in all of our shredded chicken. Mix everything well, and then we'll add a quarter to a half a cup of raisins that I forgot to mention in the beginning of the video. Next, add 2 tablespoons of your chopped parsley. Now we're adding our tablespoon of oregano. Instead of just putting it directly into the jigote, we're going to rub it in between our hands, and that brings out the flavor a lot more. It's very important that you do this. After you mix everything well together, the last step is to add our cooked potatoes. Gently incorporate them in, and we'll let this cool in the refrigerator overnight, or at least for 8 hours. Now that we have the jigote cooling in the fridge, we'll get started with the masa. Here are all the ingredients you'll need. 8 cups of flour, 2 cups of manteca, 1 tablespoon of salt, 1.5 cups of sugar, 2 1/4 tablespoons of achiote powder. This is the achiote powder that we have, but you can also get it in this kind of small packet form, or you can have it in the seed form. Both are cooked the same way. We'll have 1 egg and 2 cups of water. The first step will be to melt about a 1/4 cup of manteca and then adding your 2 1/4 tablespoons of achiote powder. If you use the seeds, you do the exact same thing, you just have to strain the seeds at the end. At this point, we're adding 1.5 cups of sugar to 8 cups of flour. You can do this by hand, or if your mixer has a dough hook, that works just as well. Next, add your 1 tablespoon of salt. Give that a little mix and form a little well in the center of your bowl. Add the manteca in large chunks so it's easier to mix in. Go ahead and make another little well for your egg. And if you flip the bowl like this, you won't get egg yolk dripping down the side of your bowl. Now it's time for the star of the show. Don't get freaked out if you think that the color is a little too dark. You always lose a little bit of color when you bake it, so it looks just fine. Start mixing everything together and add the water little by little until you start forming your dough. This is what your masa should look like by the end. If it's too sticky, add a little flour. If it's too dry, add a little water. We're gonna hand knead this for 15 minutes. Got my watch set. Go to town. If you're not sweating by the end of this, you might have done something wrong. I've got a cookie sheet lined with some parchment paper, and we're gonna go ahead and divide this into small sections. Roll them into a little ball and place them on your parchment paper. We'll cover it and put it in the refrigerator overnight. These are a little big, but you should get about 24 to 26 balls. Here we are on day 2. We've pulled everything out of the refrigerator, and we're gonna go ahead and warm up the masa balls with our hands a little bit to kind of soften them up. And instead of just rolling it out in one fell swoop, we're gonna go ahead and rotate them every time we roll them out. Now that we have the dough rolled out, it's time to add the jigote. I kind of chop it up in the bowl a little bit so it's easier to fill. Don't be afraid to really pack the salteñas because really, who wants a small salteña? Nobody. Our hard-boiled eggs are just quartered, so at this point we'll go ahead and put one right on top and then we're ready to close it up. I find it convenient to have a napkin close by to wipe my fingers after working with the jigote. We'll go ahead and pinch the sides together. Don't be afraid to really smush it closed because the masa can really handle it. It's not very thin. So kind of wiggle it around, make sure that all of the pockets are filled with jigote. And then you want to pinch the sides closed and leave a little bit at the end because you want to be able to get all of the air out. You don't want any air pockets inside the salteña. Keep in mind that when you're pinching it closed, you want to have enough room to make the braid. So if you have too much jigote, you can always take it out at this point. Gently squeeze the sides together so that you get all of the air pockets out. And once you feel like you have, go ahead and pinch the very end closed, and then we'll get started on the braid. Once you get to this point, you want to make sure that you have 1 finger thickness so that you have enough room for the braid. The braid is really easy once you get the hang of it. You're just going to pinch and fold. Don't be afraid to pinch it hard. And you're going to form a little bit of a triangle. So pinch it, fold it, pinch it, fold it, and then just go all the way around. Once you get to this point, you're going to have a little bit left over and you're going to fold that right underneath the salteña. And there you have it. This is what your braid should look like. I forgot to mention that we'll be using 1 beaten egg as our egg wash. Don't ever put it on the braid, only on these sides, otherwise it'll burn. Each ball of masa was a little bit too big, so I started taking a little bit off to make each salteña. I baked these at 550 for 8 to 10 minutes. Look how beautiful these are. Oh my goodness. And the nice thing about baking them the same day is that you can kind of tell if you have enough salt in the jigote. And these ones needed a little bit more salt, so we added a little bit more. But if you're going to freeze them and then bake them, it'll be 400 degrees for 20 to 24 minutes. Buen provecho!